There you go. Just have to get it.
No, those are, they basically say those are.
Those are glass. It's all glass. Heavy glass. It's all heavy glass.
Tall, heavy glass.
So they can mount this camera.
Like this.
Get one of the pictures above the fridge.
This should be enough, just for the camera.
I'm gonna put the new address back up on Facebook, is what I'm gonna try to do, and then we'll go ahead. It'll be 3 minutes if my fingers go fast enough, and then we'll start.
Careful, it's just resting in there, yeah.
Stop, it's polite, so we don't have to pick it up.
It's hilarious how it's just. I just know. I'm pretty impressed that you were surprised.
I put it on the page for this event.
So she goes to the old address.
No, it's easiest if you go on Did you get the invite for this particular night? I'll just send you another email.
Okay.
If there's a way, there should be a way on this one to mute it.
To mute.
To mute.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, right. All right. Thank you so much for your patience. I did not expect that technological error, but we got it figured out for working somehow. So, what was going on is every little recital that we have here, I like to broadcast it so that family and friends that aren't able to be here tonight can watch live online. So we were having a little bit of problem with that, but it's going. We should have a larger audience than what you see here. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Lene Kramer, and I have absolute delight and pleasure of working with the harpists that you're going to hear tonight. The first piece that we're going to play is a very well-known Christmas song, Joy to the World. So if I can ask my harpists who are going to play this for us to come up, we'll get started. All right, so now all of these ladies and a few other ladies have prepared some solos to get us in the Christmas spirit. So we're going to start with Miss Amelia.
This is playing the Christian memory dance. It's a traditional family. And they have a favorite song that's not a Christian favorite song.
All right, now for Miss Jenna.
I'm being music really bad.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway,
So,
so I'm gonna play. I'm scary actually. I'm watching it. Anyway, so I'm gonna play a collection of 4 pieces from a song book called Green Rose of Holly. So the first one is called The Father's Heart's Forgotten, and it was written in the 4th century by a Roman Spanish lawyer. The second of my pieces is called Reward My Tidings, Sons of Eve, and it's a 5th century Spanish ballad published in Venice in 1556. The third piece that I play is called The Seven Joys of Mary, and it's an English ballad with many versions. So each verse is about one of the joys that Mary had in her life. I'm playing one verse, so don't worry about it. And then the last piece that I'm playing is called Drive the Cold Winter Away. And it's a song that dates back to the 16th century. So after the Reformation, this was canceled for like 18 years or something, and the piece was just forgotten about, and it didn't regain favor until the 17th.
this is one lady I've not served yet, but we're going to have several treats for her tonight. So here's the first solo treats. In the spirit of the season, I decided to prepare for you an extremely Christmas-related song, which is related to Christmas in that it is in no way, shape, or form having anything to do with Christmas. Really distantly related to Christmas way. This piece is called Shul Arun. It means Gaelic for walk, my love, and it's a traditional Irish song. The precursor pieces I'm playing are the Holy Rent, which is called It Is Born All Over Made. It's an English song. And in this song, I've got a French song. And they're all Make your, no, maybe he's back here. Carefully make your way to the chairs here. I have one person who's joining us from Redding, California. I've had the treat of teaching a number of people over Skype or Hangouts or whatever we would call it, depends upon the day. And this, let's see, say something. Can you hear me? No, I did the wrong thing. Okay. Lily, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I can hear you. This is Lily. So she has a song prepared for us. Can you kind of see that? Shall I put it up a little bit more? There we go. All right. You can't see anybody. I know. You're going to have to play in the blind. Okay. I think if I do that, there you can see the ceiling. All right. Here's Lily. Introduce your piece.
Hi, so I'm doing a piece called You Is My Newfound One by this book and by it's like Jack and Oregon Wright.
And so you can see your audience. There they are. All right. Gonna put you in the back so you can see more harp music. The next harpist is Miss Candace.
I've been friends with Lene for a long time, and I've been studying the harp since like June or July. So, with that disclaimer, I'm Lene. God Rest You Merry Gentlemen is a traditional song. I have no idea when it was written.
We have sharing of parts going on here. It reduces the amount of parts we have to take.
As I was listening to that last song, it seems like it's simple, but it's just one little note plucked on the harp is so beautiful, don't you think? It's so nice. Well, the song that I'm playing is What Child Is This, which is a very popular Christmas song. But it's also, it's built on the theme of green sleeves, which was written way back in the 1500s. And the lyrics for this one was in 1865. And what I discovered about this song, and what's interesting, is that it's in two parts. The first part is a question, and then the second part is an answer. And the question is, who is this child? Here's a little baby in a manger. Here's mom and dad, and they're in this little stable. And yet all these people are coming to look at this child. And it's the writer is saying, what kind of person is this that would draw all this attention? Just kind of pondering. And then the second half is the answer to the question, which is, this is not just a baby, it's a king. It's Christ the King. And it kind of reflects that. The first part is kind of a pondering type sound, and then the second half is real joyful. So I hope you'll see the contrast and enjoy it for that reason, at least. So, thank you all for our soloists. I'm going to ask the ensemble to come back up. We're going to do 3 songs, and then we have another street tribute. So, I'm not sure if you've noticed there's been a bit of a theme going on today. We have carols from all sorts of different countries, a lot from the British Isles. And then we also have really old songs. So, in keeping with this theme, the ensemble has prepared kind of like a medley of these different songs for us. And so we have songs from England, from France, from Scotland, and other places. So, to begin it, we're going to start with the Portsmouth.
The next piece, you should recognize. They're going from one to its neighbor. You can't say they're your friendly neighbors. In Scotland, to be baked and braised. And in keeping with that kind of rustic sound and everything, we're going to have a little story. But I'm not going to tell you anything about the story, because I think the story will be that much better. I think that I would like to invite our little harpist. Little, I didn't mean that, not at all. That was our esteemed harpist, talented and amazing harpist to come hang out here. Because, I don't know, I flail a lot of gesture. The story that I have for you is called The Lady of Wild Things, and there's a little heart bit at the end that Lene helped me compose, so that, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
We're good.
So, yeah. This is very maybe I should sit. Don't mark out of the way, just go ahead, I got room. It's not
It's had a 3-year-old do that to it a couple times, no worry.
I'd like to see how many of you were in second grade before they used it out. It's a little party trick. It's not a Christmas story, but it is a winter story. And it takes place in the crystalline hush of the forest, where a hunter crept among birch trees. The crunch of his boots on the snow was the only sound to interrupt the stillness of the afternoon. Even his breathing was measured and steady and nearly silent. All of a sudden, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a flash of red gold. It was there and then gone. The hunter stole quietly over the snow and found deer tracks embedded there. So he did what hunters do, which is the searching and the finding of the things. And he followed the tracks. He followed them over the landscape until he came to a narrow cave. And at the mouth of the cave were the ashes of a fire. And as he crept closer, following the deer tracks, he found that where the snow line gave way to dirt, there were no longer hoofprints, but footprints. And the hunter crouched down, gazing at the evidence on the ground, when from the mouth of the cave stepped a woman. And she was wearing a long white shift, and her eyes were the rich brown of the earth. Her hair was a tumble of squally red curls down her back, and she was humming and then holding a stack of kindling to lay new fire. as she walked out on bare feet, seeming impervious to the cold. And the hunter stared, transfixed, and decided he had to know more about what was going on. And so he stood and he made to ask her name, but as soon as he moved, her head snapped to the side. She dropped her armful of kindling and bounded away through the snow. And the hunter called out, "Wait!" But the moment that her foot crossed the snow line and touched the snow, she was no longer a woman. There was the sound of falling leaves and the scent of juniper, and no longer a woman, but a deer. A red gold doe that went bounding off through the forest. And the hunter did what hunters do, which is that he gave chase, and he followed her for as long as he could see her, but she was much, much faster than him and had the advantage of having twice the number of legs. So he followed her for as long as he could, until he couldn't see her anymore, and then he followed her tracks for as long as he could, but then it began to snow again. And the snow came thicker and deeper until her tracks were covered over. And the hunter had wandered into land that he was not terribly familiar with, and soon he found himself lost. And the snow fell, and the snow fell, and he grew less and less familiar with his surroundings. He wandered, getting colder and colder, and the frost was starting to get to his hands and creep up his legs, and he was soon numb with cold and confusion. And if this had been a much shorter and a much sadder story, it might end right there with the hunter turning into a popsicle. Fortunately for us, it doesn't end there. He might have died right then and there of the cold if it hadn't been for a little thatch-roofed cottage. Just visible in the distance, he could see some smoke coming out of a friendly-looking chimney. And he stumbled his way towards the door, the cold stealing over him, and fell against the door, the thud of his body against the door sufficing for a knock. And when a surprised old woman opened the door, he fell in an ungainly sprawl onto her floor. He awoke in the morning light, sore, but no worse for wear. And there was the old woman, rocking in a chair. "Ah," she said, "he lives." I don't know how to thank you. I think you saved my life last night. I hardly know how I even came to be here, said the hunter. It wasn't any trouble. He said, "I have to thank you. What can I do? I feel certain that you saved my life. I would have died of the cold, or worse, of confusion. Can you die from confusion? I would have." And she says, "Well, I tell you what, I could use some more firewood. I'm getting on in years. You could save my back the trouble. Firewood, done. I'm on it." And the hunter, with his very own axe, set to chopping that very moment. And he chopped and he chopped and he chopped enough firewood to last the old woman for several more winters. He worked with concentration. He worked as hard as he could until mid-swing he seemed to remember something. He stopped and then slumped. And the old woman said, "What is it? What is it that troubles you? I can see you have a young heart that keens." The hunter said, "I hardly know what to say. I was in the woods, and I saw this woman, and when I tried to talk to her, she became a deer." The old woman nodded. She said, "You have seen the Lady of Wild Things. She sees to this forest as the moon sees to the tides. You have seen her." And the hunter said, "The Lady of Wild Things. How can I tame her?" And the old woman grunted and raised an eyebrow. He said, please, this is so important because I love her, and I'm pretty sure that if I can't find her, I will die." And indeed, this was true because this is a story. And that is how quickly people fall in love in stories. So the old woman said, "All right, I suppose I owe you that much for the extra 5 years of firewood. Fine. I tell you what. In this wood, there was a single hickory tree. It grows alone. It is a very magical tree. You will know it by the shaggy bark all around the sides. Find that tree and climb to the top, and I warn you, go carefully. The branches are brittle this time of year, and it will be no fault of mine if you fall and snap your neck. Once you have climbed the tree, take your knife and remove all the bark from the top, foot and a half, your elbow length, about that much of the tree. Collect all of it, make sure that no pieces are left behind. Climb down the tree, soak the bark in water, weave the bark into a hoop, slip the hoop around the deer's neck, you'll have it, it'll be great. She'll do whatever you have to do. She'll do what you want, she'll be yours. It's cool. It'll look great. And the hunter thanked the old woman, and he set off to do what hunters do, which is the searching and the finding of the things. He searched throughout the forest until he came to a hickory tree, standing alone in a clearing. And it stood some 30 feet high. Oh, and some people might have been daunted by the terrifying height of this tree, but this is a story, and so he wasn't. All right. Okay. And he hoisted himself up onto a branch, and he began to climb. That hunter climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed, until his arms were sore and pulsing and throbbing and being really uncomfortable, and he did not look down because he didn't want to vomit. And when he had reached a dizzying height where only a few spindly branches were there to cling to, he very carefully removed his knife and began to strip the trunk of the tree of all of its bark, and with each piece he set it into his satchel until no pieces were left behind, and then carefully, with more splinters than he could possibly care to count, he made his way back down the tree. And then he ran to a stream and had hacked open the ice because it's winter, and then he soaked the pieces of bark in water until they were supple. And when they were supple, he sat and he wove them into a circle until he had made an entire hoop. He was very proud of himself. He had done a lot of work, and it was going to work out great because now he has a magical hoop. It's going to be amazing. And he gave the hoop a few experimental tosses. Just to get the feel of it. And then he set off. And he went back through the forest doing what hunters do, which is the searching and the finding of the things. He set out to find the Lady of Wild Things. And after a few hours' search, he found her there in a clearing, a beautiful red gold doe. And with painful slowness, approached as quietly as he could. And when he was within distance, he took the hoop and slowly reached out. There were also hearts. Magical was. He reached back and tossed the heart with the accuracy and precision of a man very well practiced in horseshoes. And if the Lady of Wild Things had been a horseshoe or an iron peg, and if the hoop had been a horseshoe, then maybe he would have been successful. But as it were, they both watched the graceful arc of the hoop as it rose, and she neatly sidestepped it as it fell. The Lady of Wild Things gave a flick of her ear and trotted off, unconcerned. Now, the hunter was not going to be deterred. He was not going to be discouraged. He decided he needed to try another track. So, he took an arrow, and he found a suitable rock and blunted the edge of the arrow against the rock. And then he took a strip of leather and tied a strip of leather from his boot, and then he took the strip of leather and he tied a strip of leather to the hoops, and he got an arrow with hoop kind, and very good. And then he's got the plan, right? And he's gonna take the arrow and shoot the arrow with the hoop on it. It's gonna work really, really well, right? Foolproof, right? Perhaps if this were another sort of story, we might have several amusing scenes with motivational music playing, in which the hunter at first is really clumsy, but then he finally gets it, and then he's able to send the arrow wherever he wants with astonishing accuracy. But the truth of the story is that arrows were never meant to be fitted with hoops, magical hickory ones or otherwise, and instead the hunter spent several frustrating hours chasing after his aerodynamically improbable contraptions. He wasn't quite sure if he had really seen the red gold out of the corner of his eye watching him, or if he had imagined it. He felt certain that he was imagining that there was some laughing coming from a stand of trees nearby, and that couldn't be real. And perhaps in a different sort of story, there would have been a coterie of raccoons and squirrels cheering, going like, what a dark day. And perhaps in a different sort of story, there would have been. But regardless of how many times he tried shooting the arrow, it didn't work. He couldn't make it go where he needed it to go. He realized this was not going to work. I got it. Okay. New tactic. The prince, he's not a prince, you guys. Why would you even say that? The hunter. Too many stories floating around my head. The hunter set off through the woods to find the cave where he had first seen the Lady of Wild Things. He borrowed from the old woman a length of rope, and he took the length of rope and he tied one end of it around the hickory hoop and laid it at the mouth of the cave of the Lady of Wild Things. And then he took an awl, and he took the awl and he hammered it into the top of the cave of the Lady of Wild Things. And he threw the rope over the awl, and he took the other end, and being extremely careful, all right, okay, he's got the other end of the rope, and he went to hide in a clump of bushes over here. And then the plan is that when the Lady of Wild Things comes through, he can jerk the rope, and then it'll lift up the hoop, and then the hoop will fall directly onto and around the neck of the Lady of Wild Things. It's foolproof. It's gonna work, right? Right? Okay. We have to have hope, you guys. It's Christmas. All right. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great. So he's got his rope, and he waited. He waited. He waited. Waited exactly like that. He waited. And it was a really warm day. And all of a sudden, he was jerked awake by the tug of the rope in his hands, and he popped up from out of the bushes to see the doe with one long strip of hickory in her mouth. And she had eaten the rest of the hoop. And the hunter called out, "No, wait, I needed that!" And he started to leap after her, but as had happened in every single one of their previous encounters, the Lady of Wild Things bounded away unconcerned. If he had been a different sort of hero, he might have noticed a pattern. As it were, he went to where there were only a few scraps of hickory left on the ground. He thought, now what? I need these. This is all I have. And heartbroken, he returned back to the cabin of the old woman, where she sat. Also, she was drinking water when I found her. Where she sat with a kettle over a fire. And he held out the pieces of hickory and he said to her, "I failed." And she said, "Yes, you did. But take heart, son, you were never meant to tame the raven." He said, "I only wanted to be with her." And after taking an extremely long sip of water, she said, "Well, that's a different question, Sonny Jim, and a very different sort of magic. You were never meant to tame the lady, but there's no guarantee for this sort. I can give you a little more help. There's no guarantee, but you can invite her in. Here is what you must do. And so, armed with a new plan, the hunter set back out for the forest. He went until he found a cherry locust tree, and with that same axe, he hacked off several branches the length of his arm. And then with his great bundle of cherry locust branches, he found a spot near, but not too near, the cave of the Lady of Wild Things. And he cleared a circle in the center of the snow until he revealed the damp reeds beneath. And he set the branches around into almost a complete circle, leaving one branch open. And then he sat in the center of the circle and he waited. And if this were a different sort of story, he might have fallen asleep again to some comical effect. He might never have learned to love better. But he did. And this time he merely waited. And though the day was warm and the daybirds were flying overhead, they were flying up here where birds are normally. And though the day was warm, he did not fall asleep, but stayed vigilant and waited. And when the Lady of Wild Things approached on ginger hooves, he did not move. And she looked, her head tilted quizzically to the side, waiting for him to make some kind of aggressive move. But he didn't. He waited. She approached closer and closer and more. And he said to her, "There or I you're free to be, and I won't order stay with me, but bid my antlers to be true, I will rise and go with you." The Lady of Wild Things smiled. She took one step inside the cherry locust circle, and there was the scent of juniper and the scent of juniper and the sound of falling leaves. And there before him stood the woman. With one hand, she took that last branch and closed the circle. With her other hand, she held it out to the hunter who still sat on the floor. He reached up and took her hand, and together they took a step together out of the circle. One breath in, there was the sound of falling leaves, the scent of juniper, and two deer, a doe and a stag, went bounding off toward the horizon in the crystalline hush of the forest. There or I, you're free to be, and I won't order stay with me, but bid my antlers to be true. I will rise and go with you. And so, dear friends, my leave I take, and from these dreams we'll all away. And now, for now, we'll part as friends until the next day begins. other stories. Now, for a few more ensemble songs. So the next song that we're going to be playing for you is from England, and Danielle actually played it for us last Christmas. And the story is so sad and so depressing, I'm not even going to mention it. Here is Country Carol. And now for a little bit more joyous, a song also from England. We will bring you My Dancing Day. Right? Where is it? I'm not sure that they don't work either. Yes, please. This is the joy of having 36 strings. Because they have a tendency to go out, and sometimes in the most uncomfortable place.
Suppose it doesn't crack when someone knocks your heart.
Yeah, I might have to. That's a beautiful quote. No, there is a story that I have heard. I don't know if it's actually true, but there were a group of people that came, I want to say maybe from like a tribe, and they never heard traditional like Western music. So somebody's like, okay, I'll take them to the symphony. And so they sit there, they observe the whole thing, and when everything is done, their host says, okay, which part did you like the best? And they're like, the stuff at the beginning, we like that. And they talked a little bit more and tried to figure out what they were talking about. They liked it when everybody was like doing the warming up and the tuning. That what's your favorite part? So there is a beauty to tuning and warming up. She's very good job. All right. And for another song, this one has a special technique. The harp in the orchestra is considered a percussive instrument, just like the piano is also part of the percussion. But we're probably thankful that percussionists don't have to learn both harp and piano to be considered percussionists. We have our own percussionist with us today who's going to use the harp in a very percussive way. In fact, so many moons ago, I had the pleasure of studying the harp with Allison Austin in Seattle. And she had a harp on. We prepared a Christmas concert together. And there was this song I just loved. And there was this movie, like film, that goes with the song that also just really captivated me. And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to have a group of harpists that I can call my own that can also play this piece because I like it so much. It's called Walking in the Air. And I'm not sure if you've ever had the opportunity to see this little movie play that's really popular in Britain. There's this little boy, and he ends up being taken by a snowman up to the North Pole. And they have a little snowman festive party up there, and he's the only boy that gets to be there and watch it all. So this is the song that is sung because in order to get to the North Pole, the little boy had to walk or fly in the air. And while they're doing their levers and pedals, this will be our last song for the evening. I'm really, really grateful that all of you were able to make it. And I want us to all give a huge round of applause to the Stiglitzes who have opened their home for us. It's really special. It's a lot of work to open a house to this many parts, so thank you. asked all my harpists to come up and we'll have, what I call a family picture. I feel like everyone here is part of the harp family. So come on, the outside of the harp, those are behind them. And who wants to take a picture? Okay. My camera actually has right now.
It's coming down. Okay.
Why don't we just take a picture?
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm a family.
Okay, yeah.
That is not. Okay.
Yeah, last year she was.
Great.
I was kind of. I mean, I
doesn't. All right. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Can we? Let me just zoom in a little bit. There we go. 1, 2.
Can we?
The tea, the juice, this one.
Or something.
They went home.
Okay.
Hi, how are you? Good, thanks. Rebecca's got an 8 o'clock, she said she's got it on 8, so she could do it. She already had.
Thank you. So, go get your refreshment.
I haven't printed anywhere for it.
That just made me.
I was like, but this was of course, if I did one. And it's and this morning I said, like on down. I said, but I said,
Always play. I don't know.
So you can ask I think he's very confident that you're like but actually so
We started it early to make sure that it's constant. Okay. They can't put everything that's down together. Yeah, we're not doing it.